What is going on YouTube? It's Jake, aka StarCoding, coming at you with another video where we're talking about computer science. The past couple months, we've been reading The Mythical Man Month by Fredrick P Brooks. And this is a relic. This is a relic, guys. This book came out in, I want to say 1975, which is kind of, ancient. In the dawn of days of computing for the most part. Like, you think of 1975, what? That's probably 40-ish years ago, almost. We're getting there, 40 years ago. And it's about a person, Frederick Brooks, who worked at IBM, and he documented a lot of the things he saw, how he managed his programming teams, some of the ways that he saw how programmers work, and there are just so many new technologies, so many new philosophies within computer science. I thought I would start off 2024 reading some of the fundamental and ancient truths of what it means to be a software engineer in the world of programming. And so I think we're going to make like a little video series, just like bite-sized chunks of some topics that are covered in this book. Just something along the lines of like why your development team sucks or how you could be a better developer. Something like that. Something about development teams and bringing it back. Because I think preaching the past, especially in a modern age, is always worthwhile. Some worthwhile conversations. And the first thing we're going to talk about, something that's bite-sized, something that I think everyone can apply to their workflow, tomorrow, today, is this chapter called Sharp Tools. Frederick P. Brooks outlines a chapter where he talks about how a tradesman is defined by the tools he uses. If you're a carpenter, you got your tool belt. If you're building houses, you have your tool belt. For software engineers, we have our tool belts. And no, we're not talking about languages. I think that that assumption and that assertion gets made all the time. Like, you use Perl for this, you use C for this, you use Golang and JavaScript for this, and HTML, CSS. And I think that's great. I think having languages as tools is a great philosophy to have when it comes to solving like program or solving problems, programs. I mean, maybe they're the same thing. I don't know, guys. Um, but that being said, like, yes, you can have your languages as tools, but also we can have software as tools too. Don't forget that because we're making software, we can't use software that already exists to do the things we do. Obviously, we use an IDE, so getting to know your IDE is very important. I think a lot of YouTubers kind of harp on this. I know the Primogen especially does. Like, he loves NeoVim. Some people love Helix. Some people love VS Code. Your IDE is definitely a tool. It's a software tool that we use to write. And so taking the time to learn your IDE is essentially is super important. It's not a dumb thing to do to spend a Saturday afternoon or maybe 30 minutes in the morning figuring out a new hotkey. That's totally a good use of your time, especially if you're going to be using that IDE for the next 10, 20 years. It's like having how do you know how to use a sawmill or something like that. Yeah, it takes a lot to learn. That being said, there's also other tools other than the IDE, specifically when it comes to like getting process dumps, stack traces, or maybe on the machines that you're like testing. Like, what domain is your software in? And is there any like PowerShell script? Is there any Bash script that we can write to just do something cool that's useful for you and your team? Instead of making software for your end user customers, make software for you and your developers. Don't go asking your manager, hey, I know that we have X amount of time and within the sprint, I want to dedicate some time to make this tool. If you're comfortable with your project manager and your, development manager, go for it. Sure, that's awesome. But this is mostly something that you should probably do on your own time. Something that you should do alongside the regular day work. You're like, oh, I'm doing this thing over and over again. It'd be super cool if I had this tool to get this debug output or to see this certain event that's happening within my system. I'm talking very abstract here, but for me, for example, I do a lot of things with Windows services. So if I want to like test something unique with the Windows service, there's this program called Service Any that is open source and on GitHub. Essentially, what that allows me to do is spin up a Windows, like any exe, I can certify it and put it as a Windows service. So something like that, super helpful. Having sysinternals. How can I view my network traffic with Wireshark? That's also pretty cool. Seeing how many disk fetches are happening. It depends what type of project you're working on. Obviously, if you're doing web application stuff, you probably don't have to worry about your hard drive disk, but maybe your roundabout time it takes to ping your database and get that back. Stuff, tools that you can use to quantify and qualify all the little minute details of your application are super cool. Um, I think one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to just tools in general is probably why I like cybersecurity so much, because when you're doing capture the flag challenges in cybersecurity, there's not a lot of times that you know how to do it absolutely on your own. There's a lot of times that you download Kali Linux and it comes prepared, prepackaged with all these software solutions that already exist that do a bunch of things, like AeroDump. I'm thinking of like Dirbuster, off the top of my Burp Suite. Like when it comes to cybersecurity, like we always leverage tools to help us do our task. And I think sometimes in software engineering, we're so focused on making software from scratch that we don't even look around and make stuff to make it a more efficient process. So when it comes to managing your team, as they say, maybe have someone dedicated to building PowerShell scripts, building Bash scripts to automate the domain specific things on your program, as well as looking out into the open source world to see if there's some open source solutions out there that kind of automate or help out in the developer process for whatever it is you're doing. And then within your company, within your organization, have a GitHub repo that's dedicated to all the tools, so that way you can give it to the rest of your team without any issue. So, yeah, guys, that was my short rant on Sharp tools and why you should have them a part of your team. Thank you.